Hey, if you've been watching my stuff, make sure you subscribe and join everyone who already has, especially with what's probably coming soon. So, Nintendo in 2024 has been, well, there have been some great video games, but fewer overall and more have been remakes and remasters. It's clear they're stalling for time until their next console is ready, and the fact that it still isn't has thrown off a lot of people's predictions. Talk about videos that aged poorly. All we know for sure is it'll be unveiled before the end of March and will be backward compatible with games for the original Switch. Beyond that, we can only speculate when the successor will launch. Current theory is late spring/early summer, and what it'll be capable of. But you know what isn't getting brought up as much about this Switch 2, or whatever the name ends up being? What games it'll have. I want to take a deep dive into where each of Nintendo's major series are right now to see if we can read the tea leaves. This will be mostly educated guesswork, and while I will mention a few loose rumors, there won't be any overt leaks. Not that anything huge has happened as of the time of recording this anyway. So sit down, fetch the nearest crystal ball, and let's attempt to predict what the Switch 2's early lineup might be like. Nintendo likes to launch their home consoles with a huge game from one of their biggest franchises. This time, I think a new 3D Mario platformer will be the vanguard, mostly because 2D Mario and multiple Zelda games have already happened recently. Expect something that shows off what the Switch 2 is capable of, both visually and with some gimmick that ties into a new feature, while taking the platformer formula in some bold new direction. Maybe something like Bowser's Fury on a larger scale, combining the semi-open 3D exploration with power-ups from the 2D games. I've seen people speculate Mario going full open world a la Breath of the Wild, but I don't know if I'd go that far. What about the rest of the Mario cast? Which of the many secondary series could get a new game early on? This franchise has everyone's attention right now thanks to the movie and theme park attractions, so it's worth talking about. The thing is, though, Donkey Kong and Yoshi have been weirdly quiet for a while. All the former has accompanying his theme park expansion is a port of returns that was clearly outsourced. It feels like Nintendo isn't sure what to do with these two compared to Mario himself, so while something new could happen soon, I'm not sure we should count on it. One character I would bet on? The Man in Green. Luigi's Mansion 3 was a big deal. Developer Next Level Games has been quiet since mid-2022, and I wouldn't be shocked if they want to do a Luigi's Mansion movie eventually. I wouldn't rule out Luigi's Mansion 4 being out by Halloween 2025, but it might slip into 2026 if the release schedule is too cluttered. I figure there'll also be a WarioWare game at some point that uses one of the Switch 2's gimmicks for a bunch of the usual out-of-pocket micro games. Move It happened late last year though, so probably late 2026 at the earliest. As for Wario Land, the same situation as the DK and Yoshi platformers, but more so. Maybe something worth letting an indie developer take a crack at? Mario also gets plenty of spin-offs, and those are difficult to get a read on. It's been a while since the last Mario sports title, but that doesn't feel like a Switch 2 thing. More likely, I think, that we get one for the regular Switch in 2025 to give it a few more games as it winds down toward retirement. Meanwhile, all of the Mario RPG spin-offs are active again, but they all got games in the last year, so it'll be a while before any of them get follow-ups. Paper Mario's definitely gonna happen, but likely not until 2027. And this might be a reach, but with the Super Mario RPG remake selling pretty well, I think a true sequel might legitimately happen. Don't expect it until holiday 2026 at the earliest if it does, though. As for Mario and Luigi, I have no idea. I think Nintendo will want another, but it won't happen until after the other two. And if Brothership's new developer becomes unavailable, it could take even longer. But those pale in comparison to the spin-off fans have waited nearly a decade for. We've gone the entire Switch era without a new, non-mobile, Mario Kart. And while 8 Deluxe has been great, a new console is the perfect time to move forward. I think they've been holding the next game back for the Switch 2, and it's going to be a flagship title and probably their big holiday 2025 game, unless it shows up earlier. I see two potential routes for this thing. One would be to delve deeper into the Marioverse with more secondary characters and locations than we've seen before. Imagine a DK track set somewhere other than a jungle, or a Wario one that takes place in Diamond City. Or maybe, since MK8 dipped into crossover content, the next Mario Kart could bring in more tracks and drivers from other Nintendo series. Wouldn't need to be full Super Smash Kart, but having characters like Samus and Olimar driving around Death Mountain and the battleship Halberd would definitely stand out. I actually covered what both options could look like a while back. Alright, what about the rest of Nintendo's big three? I'm not sure what to expect from The Legend of Zelda. Normally I'd say they'll want something big on the Switch too quickly, but we just got a new 3D Zelda last year and 2D Zelda a few months ago. There's a very real possibility that the next mainline Zelda title won't be ready until 2027. So what could bridge the gap until then? More ports or remasters could happen. Wind Waker and Twilight Princess HD have been weirdly absent, so maybe they'll show up as a stopgap. Or, rumors say an enhanced version of Breath of the Wild exists behind the scenes as a tech demo. Would they fix that up to release as a remaster? It'd be a harder sell as a less than 10-year-old game whose original version will still be playable on the Switch 2's, so I don't know. And what about Pokemon? This one always takes its time migrating to new consoles. Legends ZA is already confirmed for the original Switch for 2025, so that'll probably be their big thing next year. It seems the series' 9th generation has been extended to a 4th year, which is good, the games won't be so rushed. So I'd expect the start of Gen 10 to happen in 2026, lining up with the 30th anniversary, and that will be where the transition happens. The extra year to work on performance and aesthetics can only help the next region truly shine, I hope. What about Nintendo's other series? Let's start with one that exploded in popularity after New Horizons launched at the absolute perfect time. Would be a good idea to strike while the iron is warm and cozy with a new Animal Crossing for the Switch 2, which I think will happen. Feels like the perfect summer 2025 game to give new owners on summer break or relaxing after work something to do every day. The question is whether the dev team can have it ready in time. Apparently, Animal Crossing and Splatoon share a lot of team members nowadays, so it could depend on how much of a skeleton crew Splatoon 3 needed to handle its DLC and final updates. Speaking of which, Splatoon itself might be waiting a while, with 3 only wrapping up events a few months ago and a lot of the devs potentially being preoccupied with Animal Crossing. We might not see Splatoon 4 until 2027 or later. But there's no way Nintendo would let their biggest new IP in recent memory sit on its tentacles that long. Which has me wondering, could a spin-off be possible? What about a tactical shooter set during the Great Turf War? Think like XCOM or Mario plus Rabbids with Splatoon turf inking and squid form mechanics mixed in. What's Kirby up to? His games are always visual showpieces for the system they're on, and he made the jump to 3D in style a couple years ago. Do I think another 3D game is in the works? Yes. However, with a 3D Mario game likely anchoring the Switch 2's launch lineup, I think Nintendo will wait on releasing Kirby so both 3D platformers don't intrude on each other. Basically, this feels like it'll probably be a spring 2026 thing. Metroid is partially set already. Prime 4 is on the way for the OG Switch. I've seen people speculate about it going cross-gen, but Nintendo might do something different. The other current-gen consoles have a next-gen patch setup that lets players upgrade certain games from the previous system to take advantage of the new one's more powerful hardware. I think the Switch 2 will have something similar, so playing Samus's next mission on that will make it look and run even better. But what comes next? With how well Metroid Dread did, I think a new 2D Metroid must be on Nintendo's minds. But since we have a new Metroid game set for 2025 already, I think we won't see another until a ways into 2026. And we can't forget about Fire Emblem, having grown in the last couple generations from a niche thing to a legit secondary franchise. This one's in a weird spot. Rumors have spread for a while that a remake of Genealogy of the Holy War, the 4th title that is yet to leave Japan, is in the works. Yet almost 2 years after Engage, it's still a no-show. If it exists after all, it'll probably be an original Switch game that helps plug a gap in 2025. Or who knows, maybe a new entry with a new setting and characters will happen for the Switch 2 first, or maybe both. A Genealogy remake in early 2025 and a new game in the second half of 2026. What's their strategy here? There's even more that could show up in the Switch 2's first few years. Nintendo has a deep library, starting with whatever the hell Monolith Soft is up to. With a full Xenoblade trilogy wrapped up, they're definitely planning something to go next. Whether Xenoblade 4, Xeno something else, or that other project they were hiring for that still hasn't seen the light of day, they're probably working on the Switch 2's first epic-sized RPG. Whatever it is though, we probably won't see it in 2025 because Xenoblade Chronicles X is getting a definitive edition in March already, and it could have a Switch 2 tie-in if it gets an next-gen patch to truly elevate the Planet Mira's alien vistas. Keep an eye out for what new content gets added to this one. Knowing Tetsuya Takahashi, he'll find some way to link it to the main trilogy in a way that was quietly foreshadowed all along. Next, the Switch era included 2 surprises that I think are poised for sequels. Ring Fit Adventure came out of nowhere in 2019 and was way more successful than you'd think a fitness RPG could ever be. Astral Chain was a flashy sci-fi action game with a futuristic setting we weren't seeing elsewhere in the genre at the time, and it's fully owned by Nintendo now and apparently sold better than expected. Either, or both, could help the Switch 2's launch year for different reasons. Ring Fit Adventure 2 would appeal to casual folks while highlighting any upgrades they've made to the motion controls. Astral Chain 2 would be a visual powerhouse with challenging gameplay for hooking in more dedicated gamers. 2 halves of a compelling whole. What about Pikmin? Well, since Pikmin 4 came out last year, it's gonna be a while until the next entry, and that's if it happens as soon as possible. This franchise is notorious for long gaps, so I don't know if we can count on Pikmin 5 happening until it gets officially announced. Let's call it a wild card. Speaking of Miyamoto's pet projects, Nintendo seems to really want Star Fox to find its footing, but it's been on a long hiatus after the last attempt was a dud on a dying system. I think they might try again with the Switch 2, maybe even as soon as 2025. The question is how they might do it. It seems like series fans are hoping now for the opposite of what Star Fox Zero did. Instead of retreading 64 again with a bunch of extra gimmicks, tell a new story, with characters from more than just 64, anchored by gameplay that feels like an evolution of Assault's combination of aerial and grounded combat. I think it could work, right? There's a bunch of other dormant, or dormant-ish, IPs that could show up. Does F-Zero 99 imply an actual new entry, or the rumored remaster of GX? Could happen? Could Kid Icarus finally rise from the ether once more, or at least get Uprising remade with a less painful control scheme? Could Golden Sun come back in some form? Camelot has been oddly quiet since mid-2021, or maybe one of the Switch era's other new series could get a sequel. I wouldn't rule out a retro franchise getting revived either. The mysterious Murasame Castle sticks in my head for some reason. And that's not counting the completely new stuff that must exist. Nintendo always introduces a new IP or two to help headline their new systems. No idea what form that could take since I'm not psychic, but it's pretty likely there'll be something. The possibilities are near endless and very hard to predict. All of this first-party support is nice, but having other companies pitch in would help the Switch 2 get an even better start. Unlike the last several consoles, I think we'll see more third parties wanting a piece of the action from the start, after how hard the OG Switch hit the ground running. The company that did go all in originally will likely be first in line for the successor. I predict several of Capcom's big recent titles will get Switch 2 ports quickly. Monster Hunter Wilds, as soon as possible. The last couple Resident Evil games, no laggy cloud version necessary anymore. Street Fighter 6, expected to show up just in time for Season 3 of DLC. Actually, knowing Capcom, they might release an updated version that comes with the first 2 seasons, whether it's Switch 2 exclusive or a multi-plat arcade edition like Street Fighter 5 got, I don't know. Square Enix was also a consistent Switch supporter, kind of. While their biggest games were too technically demanding for the underpowered hybrid, pretty much everything else did get ported over. With something much closer to the rest of the current gen, I can see them playing catch-up with games the original Switch couldn't handle. Final Fantasy XVI, Kingdom Hearts 3, the Nier Replicant remake, and more. Final Fantasy VII Remake is also possible, provided Sony didn't lock down console exclusivity for X amount of years. Not sure whether Rebirth is possible or not. Speaking of RPGs, Sega will also want in on the action. The main studio's been downporting stuff to the OG Switch consistently, so all that more powerful hardware will do is make things easier. It's the rest of Sega, and its subsidiaries, that could have the gates opened. The Switch has lost out on Atlus's games this year, but the Switch 2 should be able to handle Metaphor and Persona 3 Reload, both of which have PlayStation 4 versions, without much trouble. Might see other games as well. Is the recent Yakuza Kiwami port a sign that more of the series could be Switch 2 bound? And I bet most, if not all, of Sega's upcoming revival projects will make the jump. What else might show up? I hear some obscure thing from FromSoft has been making the rounds lately. Okay, yeah, not only do I think Elden Ring and its expansions will get a Switch 2 version, I think it'll happen early on as a way to show off what the new hardware can handle. As mentioned in my video last year, I picture it playing the role Skyrim did for the original Switch. Bandai Namco will definitely get in on the action, and I think a visually downsized but still well-running version of Tekken 8 will be on their short list. And even if it's been some time since Baldur's Gate 3 rocked the gaming world out of nowhere, I could see it, and more, getting a shot on Nintendo's upgraded hybrid. Real quick diversion. All this talk of recent games, but what about old school? Nintendo Switch Online is still slowly expanding its library of classic titles. One smaller way the Switch 2 could stand out is expanding NSO further to include games that aren't practical for the OG Switch. Basically, I would not be surprised if GameCube Online becomes a thing eventually. Seems like we're getting a lot of remakes and remasters from that era lately, so Nintendo might feel like milking more of those first, or at least having the rollout be even slower. But it does feel like a natural direction to expand in. I can't believe the GameCube is old enough to be classic now, but here we are. One other I think could show up quickly. There have been scattered rumors about some kind of two-screen function using both the console and TV at the same time, so that could open up the ability to run DS games without crunching the window sizes down. The old portable's enormous library would be perfect for adding a handful of games every year, even if some would be less practical than others. I can't believe the DS qualifies as classic now. Man, I'm getting old. There could be a surprise or two as well. Can you imagine if Sega got in on this and turned some of their Dreamcast library loose for people to reasonably play for the first time in ages? Who knows? Alright, gotta talk about what my channel is most known for, and I've saved it for last. What could the Switch 2 have in store for Super Smash Bros? I've seen people assume they'll just port Ultimate over and call it a day, with the DLC included, maybe some extra content, updated graphics, and that'll be the new system's Smash game. Except that idea got a wrench thrown in it once backward compatibility got confirmed. Ultimate will already be playable on the Switch 2, and with it being the OG Switch's third highest seller, a lot of people buying in early will already own it. Another version of the game, with only minor updates, would be a tough ask at full price in an environment where most fighting games have stopped doing that. Even Capcom has slowed down on it. I don't think Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is a good comparison either. The Wii U sold poorly, and the Switch was not backward compatible. Not only that, the sheer amount of third-party licensing tied to Ultimate now would potentially involve a lot of renegotiating that could not afford a single thing falling through, or it wouldn't be a true update anymore. I think the idea of building perpetually atop Ultimate is misguided. Smash needs to move on now to something that could stand out alongside Ultimate and forge its own fresh identity without the pressure to one-up the predecessor that its devs only pulled off by the skin of their teeth. I went into detail on how a soft reboot could work a while back. Why bring up all of this? Because we have reason to believe that Smash 6, or whatever it'll be called, has been in development for a while. Remember the news about that studio over at Bandai Namco that was established for collaborative projects with Nintendo? Notice the name Studio S in there. Might sound on the nose, but considering Namco helped develop the last two Smash Bros. Games, it raises an eyebrow. Especially when Nintendo really likes to give their new home consoles a signature Smash title quickly to help build momentum. 4 times in a row now, it's shown up within the first 2 years. This has become a tentpole franchise that moves hardware on its own, and they know it. All of this adds extra context, potentially, to a statement by long-running director Masahiro Sakurai during his YouTube series finale. He mentioned, offhand, that he's been working on a project behind the scenes since the middle of 2022, which would, potentially, line up perfectly to launch early in the Switch 2's lifespan. While yes, it's possible that this could be something else, he's directed other games before as interlude projects, but he's also said that Smash is special enough for him to freely prioritize it. So if Nintendo came knocking again half a year after Ultimate's DLC wrapped up, considering the context, I think he listened. I really believe this unknown project could be Smash 6. So if this is a thing, when will it be ready? Considering all of these other games, potentially, lined up? Here's what might happen. I think the absolute latest Smash 6 will show up is the end of 2026, even if Sakurai's project is something else. It'd be one of Nintendo's big holiday titles for that year, alongside Pokemon. I would be very surprised if Smash is a no-show until 2027 or later. Nintendo will not want the Switch 2 to go without its own Smash game for too long. But if preliminary work did start in 2022, this game might show up sooner than we think. What if it's out in the middle of 2026 instead? Smash has never been a summer thing before, but we also haven't seen Nintendo's software be in such a logjam that it's been in since 2021. Or, hear me out, could it show up even earlier than that? What if the next Mario Kart is out sooner than holiday 2025, because that's where Smash 6 is penciled in? I know, sounds like a reach, but if it is the mid-2022 project and full development started shortly afterward, it'll have had almost 3.5 years of work behind the scenes. I truly think we shouldn't rule it out. Smash has done crazier stuff, right? Whew, so many possibilities, huh? Nintendo's next console has a lot of potential games for next year and beyond. From big sellers like a Mario platformer, Mario Kart, and Animal Crossing early on, to other series like Kirby, Metroid, and Fire Emblem picking up the slack in year 2 until Zelda and Splatoon can be ready, to support from third-party devs who'll want in on this thing early after how ludicrously well the original Switch is sold. And a signature fighting game combining them all might show up sooner than everyone expects. What do you think, though? Got any big predictions of your own for this new console once it finally sees the light of day? Any obvious games that I missed? Anything you're hoping might get a revival? And if this video inspired you, I'd appreciate if you checked out the other stuff I've made recently. I know a lot of people are worried about the future right now, so if I can provide some respite from that for a while, then I've accomplished something. For now, shout out to the following for helping make this video possible. Thanks especially to my patrons for the continued support. It's been a long year with a lot of ups and downs. I've done a lot of experimenting with potential video series and one-off topics, with very mixed results. Hopefully the big console reveal creates a wave of momentum that I'm able to ride to better, more stable places than ever. So, until next time, here's hoping things eventually turn out okay.